few months for me, and then they change it again. Anyways, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Samira. I think I know most of you. We have started the new series of webinars this year, which with the first one being a public webinar, which was a successful, very rich session. And the second session, which is today, is an internal session for members only. And we are very happy to have Helen as the speaker of this session. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. We have like a babysitter here, but my toddler doesn't want to stay there, so she can be here. I hope you have no problem with this. Okay, I would like to introduce Helen briefly before she starts. Helen is a PhD researcher in sustainable fashion education at the School of Education, Languages and Linguistics at the University of Portsmouth, working with families, communities, and schools to explore the social and environmental impacts of fashion consumption. Her work combines critical pedagogy with creative participatory methods, using art, design, and storytelling to empower learners to engage with and challenge the structure of the fashion industry. She has actually over 16 years of experience as an educator and has a background in the fashion sector. She has published and presented internationally, contributed to interdisciplinary initiatives like the Future Fibers Network, plus and activities, and actively campaigns for more sustainable practices through policy work and her platform, Sus Fashion Wales. That's a very brief introduction of her. She is doing like thousands of amazing things, but I hope she can complete this introduction herself. I myself am very excited to listen to her presentation, and I know that this is going to be a very interactive session, so I don't want to wait anymore, and I pass the mic to Helen. Helen, please.
Thank you so much, Samira, for a great introduction. Yeah, I do wear many, many hats, and I'm also returning to be a secondary school teacher from September. So it's just going to get even more busy post PhD. But thank you all for joining me and for giving me this opportunity to share my research. I'm in the final year of my PhD, so I'm just writing it up at the moment. If I do have a little bit of a cough or anything like that, it's just because I'm recovering from an illness. So please do bear with me. I just might need to have lots of drinks throughout my presentation. So I'm just going to get started and I'll share my screen. It would be great if you've got any questions. We will have time at the end just to go over some of those things. Let's have a look. Right, my screen is freezing a little bit, but hopefully we are all sorted. So just to kind of give you a bit of an introduction, so I'm going to be sharing one aspect of my PhD today, and I'll be focusing specifically on how art and design based learning, when adopting practivist approaches, can support education for sustainable fashion consumption. So just to give you a little bit of a there we go. A little bit of a context with my background. I am based in South Wales in the UK, and we have a very different education system to the rest of England and the rest of the UK. We have a new curriculum for Wales, which places the concept of Cynefin at the heart of all of our education and curriculum development. Cynefin is a Welsh word which means to connect or to belong to somewhere, but it is a little bit deeper than that. It could mean belonging to nature, it could be belonging to communities, or within your kind of family units as well. So what I wanted to do with my PhD was really focus on the aspects of curriculum for Wales and looking at people's backgrounds and their Cynefin and bringing this to education. So in a nutshell, my research explores how art and design critical pedagogies could be used to promote responsible consumption of fashion. But during this session, yes?
I think your screen is frozen. I thought
I'm still on that one. It's
yeah,
fine.
so yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I thought.
it's
I'm so
fine.
sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you for checking because that did happen to me last time. But yeah, for this session, I'm just going to be focusing on Practivism as a concept and an emerging pedagogical tool, but looking at how it can be used to support learners to move from that kind of passive awareness of the problems of fast fashion towards active engagement with fashion's social and environmental challenges. So I probably don't need to tell anybody here, but fast fashion has huge environmental, but also social impact as well. And a lot of these tend to be sort of experienced more disproportionately across the global majority. So what I wanted to try to do is to bring that into my research and my practice with the children, but in an age appropriate way. Education, myself as a qualified teacher, often creates awareness and stimulates awareness, but it doesn't go very far into changing behaviour or sort of meaningful activism. Also, I found from my research that children are rarely positioned in sustainability or consumption research. So this is something that I really wanted to unpack, especially when you have UNESCO saying that they are the agents of change and our future depends on them. We're just basically not researching young people as much as we should. I also wanted to look from the context of curriculum for Wales and look at ways that I can support teachers because we do have increasing workload and also our backgrounds tend to inform what we teach. So what I wanted to do was try to bring all of these really complex issues of the fashion industry, but present them in a very age appropriate way. And I've done this through cartoons. So before I go any further, I just wanted to define what I mean by Practivism. So I'm just going to click this out of the way. There we go. So for Practivism, you may have heard of this before, but if not, it's a very emerging term that's been bandied around through environmental education in the last sort of 10 years. But from the context of my research, is where we look at practical activities and activism and how we can use those to support young people within the school context. So in the realms of my research or my definition, I guess, of Practivism, it's where we use hands-on making as a form of civic and ethical action. It also blends reflection and action, which is, if for any Freudian fans in the room, is the concept of praxis. And that is believed to stimulate or move beyond simple awareness. It's also it makes complex topics suitable for all ages, but especially for young children and families outside of the classroom context. So, in terms of my theoretical framework, this is a framework that I've developed for my PhD. So, this looks at the three pedagogical theories of social constructivism or socially mediated learning, also looking at the experiential learning cycle and critical consciousness and praxis.
Helen,
Yes.
sorry. I'm reading in the chat that some people cannot see your presentation. However, I can see that perfectly.
Oh,
So maybe just let's quickly check if that's
shall
the case.
I stop sharing and try again?
Um, you can do that. I mean, I perfectly see you and the presentation, but maybe you can stop and share it again. Maybe the problem is being solved
Maybe.
because of the meeting mode. Oh, okay. Others cannot see that. Um,
Right, let me go out.
okay, thank you for letting me know. Oh, you can only see me. Okay, that's not good. So what's happening here?
Hmm.
Samira, you want to turn hosting back over to me and I'll see if, because I think this has gone into focus mode and
Oh,
I wonder if that is prohibiting being able to see her screen.
sorry.
Maybe.
And
You're
sorry.
not the host.
Okay.
Did you stop your video, Helen? Now I cannot see you too.
Let's have a look. Let's see if that works. Right. Can other people in the room see my screen? If so, I will go back to where I was and
I can
continue.
see it now,
Yeah.
and
I
everyone
can,
else.
I think.
Let's have a look. I can see
Oh,
some.
Anna says no.
I'm not. Hmm. This is very bizarre.
It is bizarre. Don't understand. Can't find anything about mode.
It says it's in focus mode, Michelle has said.
What does
Oh,
that
I
mean?
found it. I found it.
Ah.
Okay. All right. Let's see if that works.
I'll stop and then reshare. Let's have a look. Can people see that?
Now I see you and the presentation. What about
Yes.
others?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
works.
works.
Okay.
Perfect.
Woo, all
Thank you,
right.
Cosette.
Oh, excellent. Don't worry, you haven't missed too much visually just yet, just a load of text boxes, so it's not too bad. But I guess the thing that I wanted to really kind of you probably see the chats now, can't you? The thing that I wanted to really kind of emphasize visually, just on this part that I was just talking about, was how complex the fast fashion supply chain is through this map here. And I wanted to try to simplify it into a really visually appealing but also age and stage appropriate way. So yeah, I will pick up where I was. So in terms of go through those, I've spoken about that. So now you should hopefully be able to see my theoretical conceptual model, sorry. So what I really wanted to kind of emphasize with this diagram is where you see the socially mediated learning, experiential learning cycle, and critical consciousness. Practivism isn't an individual aspect of this model. It's something that is concurrently running throughout. And the aim is that this kind of approach to this learning allows the participants or the learners eventually in a normal classroom to have those kind of new experiences, be able to express and understand those emotions, but then also hopefully lead to some sort of change in behaviour or practices. But it's aimed to be the cyclical model, so it doesn't ever stop. The contextual input is always changing. Beliefs are always changing, and so are practices when it comes to consumption as well. And Practivism is central to that. So in terms of my pedagogical practice, it looks at Vygotsky's social constructivism, which involves learning from peers, family members, but also knowledgeable others. And I thought that this approach would be really useful for overcoming socially learned behaviours, which we often do find the fashion consumption is often learned from others in our family or our peer groups. And it also uses art and design as situated learning. So it kind of gives that contextual meaning. In terms of experiential learning, I've applied Kolb's four-stage learning cycle to look at ways where I could embed art and design methods to stimulate sensory and emotional experiences. And to do that, I've used textile artifacts and lots of messy play, which some of the kids loved and some not so much. And what I thought, this is a really tangible way of exploring real world, but also very complex issues through hands-on approaches. And then finally, critical consciousness is that kind of goal, which is a Freirean a concept where you start to think about other things in the world and how where your place is within that world and how you can look to seek justice through praxis. And praxis is that kind of knowledge, reflection, and action cycle. And that is also something that I am embedding within my pedagogical framework through art and design activities. The key approach to developing the kind of Freirean aspect to my research is by stimulating dialogue and having those moments to reflect and make sense of what they've learnt. It also aims to address the oppressive and colonial models of the fast fashion system by not going in and being a white saviour and making everything better, but challenging the practices that we are actually doing here in the global minority, and looking at ways that we can solve things in the future to make it more fair. And then is crucially activism is applied through practical art and play. And so in terms of Practivism, this is an image of one of my comic strip activities, which you will also get to have a bit of a go at later. So this is where I've tried to position children and families as co-researchers. So they are the ones that are trying to find the solutions to the problems that are presented. And basically looking at ways that we can have organised but also very creative action orientated workshops. So it's not just about, just doing an activity that's textiles based and that's the end of it. It's supposed to have some sort of meaning and an action following from it. And then it also emphasises making, dialogue, and also collective problem solving. So the key strategies in terms of pedagogy is that it's a learning strategy. It's also a way to gather data, but crucially, it aims to have this kind of civic participation aspect to it as well. So in terms of my research design, sorry, went too far then. I delivered workshops over an academic year in the community with families, and we looked at lots of different locations based on a typical supply chain. This was really important to me, not only as my background in the fashion industry was crucial to making it real, but I wanted it to be very relevant to the young people and also to be factual as well, because there's so much misinformation out there. So we explored 8 different locations. Each of them had a problem, which was one of the issues of the fashion industry, and that was presented by animated cartoons that I designed myself. And then there was a textiles-based solution as the kind of the draw or the way to kind of contextualize everything that they've learned through a tangible hands-on approach. It involved 200 Welsh participants. The children were actually aged 6 to 9 in the end, but the goal was 7 to 9 years of age. And the adults involved were parents, but I also trialed this in schools, so it involved primary school teachers as well. So teachers of children between 6 to 9 years of age. All of the workshops were art and design focused. So we had textile artifacts being created, but also cartoon-based activities, both paper and animated as well. There was a two-phase approach. The first part was over one academic year with a family within the community in different groups, lots of people that hadn't ever met each other before. And then I undertook 2 years of classroom-based trials as well. And then here you can see the 8 different monthly sessions. And then when I went to schools, we just didn't have enough time to do so many different sessions. So I wanted to give them a broad overview of the fashion industry. So we focused on the environmental impacts, the human cost, but then also the waste that the fashion industry generates. So Practivism in action. So I'm going to show you an example of one of the cartoons that I created for the workshop. So I'm really hoping that technology is on my side and that it works. This is one of a series of workshops, so it will reference the previous session. And then once we've done that, I would really, it would be great if you would come onto my Miro board that I've designed, and then you can have a go at, basically being one of my participants and seeing what it was like for the children, but also the parents as well. So I'm just going to press play and hope technology is on my side. Put my volume up as well.
Hello, it's great to see all your faces again. Are you ready for our next challenge? Last time we went on an imaginary journey all the way to China to learn about chemical dyes in fast fashion. You did some amazing tie-dye using turmeric, and some of you joined Helen's Yellow Minions gang. And now, we are going to Cambodia. Cambodia is a much smaller country than China, but it's just as beautiful. Fast fashion clothes are made all around the world. But did you know? There are over 1 million people who make our clothes in Cambodia alone. To make clothes you need to have lots of sewing skills. And lots of people in Cambodia are experts at sewing. Millions of the fast fashion clothes we buy from shops come from Cambodia. The people who sew our clothes together are called garment workers. The word garment is another name for clothes. Remember, there are 1 million garment workers in Cambodia. That's a lot of people. Garment workers work in huge factories where hundreds of other people also work. Most garment workers are women and they work very, very hard while also looking after their children. But garment workers don't get paid very much for the long days they work. Even though they work long hours, they get paid much, much less money than in Wales. Sometimes they earn a couple of pounds per day, but sometimes it's a lot less. Even though the garment workers work for sometimes 12 to 15 hours a day, they are not allowed to have many breaks.
Can I please go to the toilet?
No. Now get back to work.
And they often work in very dangerous places. Sometimes the factories have so many cracks in the walls, they look like they are about to fall down. And if they refuse to work because it's unsafe, they could lose their job. But it's not the factory manager to blame. He doesn't earn very much money either. And he also works very long hours too. The real bad guy is the fast fashion boss. He doesn't care about his workers, because he wants to keep all the money for himself. This is really, really unfair because the garment workers and factory managers are doing all the hard work. But there's some great news. Lots of people, and groups like Fashion Revolution, all around the world want to make sure that garment workers can work in safe places. And also, so they have enough money to look after their families. They work very hard, like superheroes, to help garment workers live the best possible life. They also tell the garment workers that we care about them. In fact, you are going to be one of those superheroes too. So today, we are going to speak up for the garment workers, and tell the greedy bosses to look after them. We could tell the bosses to pay up, so the workers get paid enough to look after their families. We could tell them to make sure the buildings are safe. We could tell them to let them have more break times. Or we could tell the garment workers that we care, by sending them happy messages. And we will do this by being creative. You will all get some pieces of fabric and you can either paint or sew your messages onto the fabric. Helen will then sew them all together to make a huge sign to send to Fashion Revolution, the team of superheroes who care about garment workers. I can't wait to see all of your creations. Thank you for being awesome superheroes. We hope you have lots of fun today. We'll see you next time for another superhero challenge.
So that video was actually created right in the middle of the Pay Up campaign. So this is where a lot of Cambodian garment workers were basically not being paid, and I think companies such as Nike and Matalan were involved, and it created huge uproar all across the world, just because the pandemic forced factories to be closed, and all of these big brands weren't paying up essentially. So that's why we focused on Cambodia. And it also gave me a good opportunity to have a bit of a bad guy in the story, which was the fashion CEO boss. And he didn't get away with it, which I will share after our little activity. So what I would like to do now, I've got a QR code on the screen, but I'm just going to stop sharing in a moment just to put a chat in, a message into the chat with a link. I've got a Miro board, and it would be great if you would please take part in the kind of practical activity. So this will give you an example of what I would be doing with the children, but also with the families as well. It's a really, really great activity. I'll explain a little bit more when you see. But the amount of data I got from this activity alone, and it, really, really did help the young people to make sense of such complex and emotional topics as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing, but I will pop the link in the chat for everybody. Let me just copy that. And then I will jump onto the Miro board. There you go. Don't know why it's come up as an image, but the link should hopefully work. And then I will just get the Miro ready. And I can see some people have already joined, so that's great. And don't worry if you've never used Miro before. I will give you a really quick demonstration. There we go. I'll just share my screen. And then hopefully you can all see that. Now, depending on what device you've actually got at the moment, the most important thing to know is if you wanted to kind of scroll across and have this hand where you can move across the board, just make sure that none of the menu, the tools on the left are actually highlighted, because if you were to click that first one, for example, here, the little arrow, that's a select tool. So you'd end up selecting items rather than moving around. So I'm just going to deselect. In the lower, you should just about to be able to see it on my screen. In the lower right of the screen, you can zoom in. So I'm just going to zoom in just to show you. I've got my hand there, so I'm able to just scroll across just like this. So what we're going to do, maybe just for like about 5 or 10 minutes, probably not that much longer, just because we're a little bit delayed. What we're going to do is we're going to have a go at one of these activity sheets that I would give to my participants. So I'm just going to zoom into it just so that you can see. So what we would do following the video, but then also as a recap activity, because these were monthly sessions, I wanted the young people to have an opportunity to really reflect on what they'd learned. But I wanted this to be as accessible as possible. So I've worked with all sorts of ages before, and I've worked with lots of people with complex learning needs, and I wanted everybody to be able to participate in this activity. So I had differentiated instructions, but the basic instruction was to draw an emoji about what they were witnessing or what they had heard in each of these scenes. So I'll just zoom in a little bit more. But you can see that each of these scenes were directly from the comic that was presenting all of the kind of information. And I left these little areas for speech bubbles. And it just allowed the young people to start to think about, what they've learned and how it made them feel, whether it made them happy, whether it made them sad. And we were able to then have conversations about that rather than having all of this written data, because a lot of the participants that I worked with didn't have, advanced writing skills, and it allowed them to be able to be accessing the activity. So I've got a few instructions just next to my example here, but I've got enough activity sheets for all of you. There's also a little area for you to put your name if you want to. You don't have to though. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go through each of these comic scenes and then using the speech bubbles to draw an emoji. So I've done an example here. unfortunately, it's not the best design tools on Miro, but we do have things like the little drawing tools, and we've got highlighters and things like that. So we're going to have a bit of a go, and I'll show you how we do that in a moment. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you can all see, but there are also some instructions there as well. Okay, so I'm going to zoom right in. And I'm going to go to this menu bar just along the side here, and you've got the little pen tool just here, which has all of these drawing options. If you wanted to draw an emoji, for example, and you wanted to have a big bold background, like for the face, the highlighter tends to be better for that. We are limited to 3 colors, but emojis tend to be in yellow anyway. So I'm just going to select yellow. And during this scene, which is the second one here, it's where we learnt about where all our clothes come from and how they are made. We learnt about the term garment worker. So I'm just going to put a little happy emoji and just draw a little circle just like that. And then I'm going to go back to the pen tool, but I might go to just the normal pen tool, and then I've got some more options, and I can change the colors as well and the different sizes. So I'm just going to have a go. Right, great big red face there. I'll just double click on that again. So then I can just do some little eyes, and that's basically it. So I just like you to spend a few minutes. If you scroll down, you'll be able to find a load of these sheets just here all ready for you. Pick one. You can write your name in there if you want to. To be able to write your name, find an area, click on the text, which is on this little menu here on the left. And then you, oh, with that, I don't think you need to do that actually. I think you just double click on it. Yes, you do. And you can just type your name in there. And I'll just give you maybe like 4 minutes to just have a bit of a go on that. And then if we've got time, we can have a bit of a chat about what you've learned. Although knowing my audience, you probably didn't learn very much, but you may have learned something. So we would normally do this as a group as well. I'm just going to keep talking in the background, but just to give you a bit of context about why we do it. So I'll zoom back into mine. So initially, coming from a kind of mainstream teaching where you're very constricted with curriculums, I wanted the young people to have an opportunity to have a chat about things, because I found that when you're a teacher and you instruct at the front of the front of the room, sometimes the information goes out, but not all of the time. So I found that this is a really great approach to allowing them to have their own voice and unpack what they've learned as well. And see a few emojis coming through. Who doesn't like drawing emojis? So I think we just have 2 more minutes on that. I will show you what we did next, just on the other side of the Miro. If you've got 5 minutes and you just want to do some doodle after this call, then you are more than welcome to come back to the Miro board if you have the time. But I don't think we'll have time to do it today, not with opportunity for questions as well. So we'll just spend like 2 more minutes on that. This activity, also just for a bit of additional context, it would usually we take about 20 minutes to half an hour to do this, depending on, how complex the topic was. I found that this particular topic of garment workers in Cambodia, it was the first time that the children had been exposed to human exploitation. So they'd learned quite a lot about the environmental damage and the impact on animals and wildlife from things like plastic and, rubbish, etc., in their primary schools already, but they'd never really been introduced to humans. So this created an incredible amount of data for myself, but also quite a lot of empowerment for the young people, considering how emotional the topic was. So, and I'll share some examples of those in a moment. So I'll just let you have maybe a minute more on that. Can see, oh, that's a good emoji. I love that. Who's this? Dirk. Crying. Yeah, absolutely. We had lots of really angry faces, lots of, floods of tears in some of the emojis that the children were drawing, but some, if it was slightly sad, they would even express their levels of sadness through the amount of tears they would draw on this. And then we'd have a conversation to kind of make sense of it as well, because it was really important for me that I didn't want to just terrify these children. And I found that doing these kind of activities really helped them to unpack it. So I'm just going to go over to the other side of the board. We're not going to have time to do this today, but this is what I was mentioning earlier. Just to the right of the activity sheets, I've got a load of squares. If we'd had a bit more time, we could have gone through this as well. But what I was going to get you to do was to create your own protest banner square, which is what I'm going to show you some of the children's examples in a moment. But, if you've got 5 minutes later and you just fancy doing a little bit of drawing, you are more than welcome to come back on this Miro board. But I'm just going to stop sharing now so I can go back to my PowerPoint. Here we go. I've done that from beginning. Don't want to do it from the beginning. I've done it again. Technology is not on my side today. Right, let's find where I was. There we go. So, yeah, using tools such as the use of comic strips, activity sheets to facilitate that dialogue, but also the use of animated cartoons was incredibly useful. So, what I wanted to kind of just go over really briefly now is that basically communicating that Practivism just moves beyond craft a little bit. So it's more about the intent and the structure and why I was using certain techniques. So all of the activities were directly selected to be problem posing and not just decorative. So I didn't want the young people to just, take part in a drawing activity or a stitching activity unless it had some sort of meaning. So the artifacts, all of them, they acted as prompts for dialogue, but also for emotional processing as well, because that was really, really crucial. And it provided evidence of agency and reasoning. And it helped the children to connect those local actions to global systems. And it really did help them to unpack those complex moral and political topics. It led to an incredible amount of storytelling and narratives, and I'll share one in a moment with you. And it really encouraged that kind of imaginative thought and discussion. And then the visual and practical tools also help to stimulate empathy, compassion, and ecological reasoning. And by that, I mean, with the topics that I thought were going to be really challenging for the young people, I found that they were able to seek justice in really playful and empowered ways, which I didn't think. I thought that they would just have this information, be upset about it, and then think that they would correct their behaviour. But they went much further than that, and definitely showed aspects of critical consciousness. And using these tools, particularly in a group, did help them to overcome that socio, but also environmental anxiety through that kind of playful resistance. So an excellent example of that is through this protest banner square that one of my young male participants created, where he wrote, "Give them more money or else." And that was obviously directed at the CEO of the fast fashion company. And this led to several conversations, very, very playful conversations about all of these or else scenarios, one of which involved the CEO being put into the toilet. And when we mean the toilet, he means the actual toilet, not just the bathroom itself. And then others were talking about flushing him down into the sewers. So there was just so much playfulness, but also real complex understanding of those systems. And some of these quotes demonstrate this quite nicely. So, even a 6-year-old understood that fast fashion is when it all goes to waste in the end. And these were all quotes from my participants through conversations. Either through the comic strips, but also through those activities as well, such as painting and weaving and all sorts of other different textile artifacts. They also started to look at aspects of boycott. So, some of them were saying that they're not going to buy unless the money is paid to the garment workers. They were questioning why people were putting certain fabrics in the bin when we were using reclaimed materials. And possibly my favourite and most complex question that I would ever expect to come from a 7-year-old was, does sustainable mean handmade? And that led to all sorts of conversations. And I think that most of you could probably agree, you could write a thesis on that question alone. So in kind of summary, I found that the use of these practivist tools, whether that was textile artifacts, colouring in activity sheets for dialogue, or the use of animated cartoons, really helped to demonstrate that children can engage with these complex and ethical systems when we give them the tools to be able to do so. It also shows how creative action can support agency, but also, using these tools and also being in a group really helped to reduce that eco-anxiety, and kind of moved beyond that passive awareness to wanting to do something about it and wanting to seek justice, and stand up for people who are being silenced. It also positioned Practivism as this bridge between theory and action, and then, obviously extending that Freirean concept of Practivism, of praxis, sorry, particularly in sustainability education. So these are some of my participants that created the first protest banner, which they were incredibly excited when they found out the Fashion Revolution shared it on their Instagram. But then in kind of summary, in terms of Practivism, I found that, it demonstrates that learning is a social and political act, and art and design is an excellent vehicle for challenging those oppressive structures. So I'm just going to end with a couple of more images here. This is one of my favorite quotes. I took during my practice, my workshops. They were all being video recorded, and this one young child, he was having a conversation with himself, almost in this kind of imaginary lived experience, where he was imagining himself as a garment worker, and what he wanted to say to the boss was that you're just brainwashing us. And I thought that is just such an unbelievable unbelievable mature kind of observation that even 7 and 6 year olds understand that people such as garment workers are being exploited, and they're kind of forced in these roles. And then finally, um, in conclusion, I also wanted to end with this image here, which is another message to a CEO of the fast fashion boss. It's in Welsh, so I can translate it. And it basically means give them dinner time and fresh air, which I think, perfectly summarizes that even really young children know that the basic human rights of all of the people that make our clothes, whether they are garment workers, whether they plant seeds, or whether they are in the dye factories, their basic human rights are not being met. So I hope you've enjoyed my very, very quick run through my PhD. But in conclusion, I found that Practivism is an excellent tool for any sort of topic, but particularly something as complex as fast fashion consumption, to move beyond that kind of passive awareness that we often find with that knowledge behaviour gap. And it also allows really ethically sensitive approaches to help stimulate that activism in young people. And then finally, it offers a practical response to curriculum, sustainability, but also agency debates as well in hugely complex topics such as fashion. So thank you very much, or as we say in Wales, diolch yn fawr. If you've got any questions, we've hopefully got about 10 minutes. And I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer if anybody needs to, but thank you for your participation, and also thank you for your ears today. I'm going to stop sharing.
Wow, Helen, thank you so much for the presentation. That was wonderful. Like I was familiar with your PhD work a little bit, but it was mind-blowing. Thank you so much for presenting and for the activity. I couldn't do the emoji thing myself because I think I should have been registered for the free version, but I will do that later maybe. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Is there any question for Helen?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you now.
First of all, thank you so much, Helen, for your presentation. And I've been following your work for some time. I think I've told you before that here in Portugal we're doing a similar project. And I was wondering, because at some point you said, well, you had 8 monthly sessions, but you lacked time to go through all of the things that you wanted. And we are facing similar issues, but and I wanted to understand, how did you find ways to overcome that lack of time? Because, for example, we wanted to engage in our project, we wanted to engage kids in textile craft, which includes sewing and all of that. But because the teachers there have so many things to teach them, they have so many things to learn, and in our sessions, well, they can't be that long and they can't be that many, and they end up using at some point they end up using glue just to hurry, and it's very conflicting for us, because we feel, well, but this is a slow practice, and how can we teach this and with little time that is available? How did you experience that?
Yeah, so another aspect of my research, so I've been investigating the kind of undervaluing of design subjects as well, and how it's quite systemic here in the UK, and I'm sure it's probably like it in other parts of the world as well. And basically what I found was, when I did the initial 8 months, I seemed to have unlimited time. The families wanted to give up more of their free time to come to more workshops. In fact, I ended up holding another one so that we could do a collaborative making that dress. But when I moved to schools, it was a completely different matter. So even though I was in primary school, which is with the young children and the teachers are with them all day, they still had so much to cram in to their curriculum. So I really wanted to understand that a little bit better. So the aim of my PhD is to basically test these resources and make them available to school teachers, but getting feedback from them to be able to tweak them and develop them so that doing these kind of slow creative activities aren't challenging and they're not going to take up too much time. And I actually found that when I went in and showed, all of my cartoons and my resources and how easy these activities and how affordable as well. Like we did a turmeric dye activity with tie-dye. It cost about £3 to do it with 30 kids. It wasn't expensive, and I found that the teachers were far more open to it. But I think what the teachers need is really basic instructions, and they need to be almost trained in this themselves. So even if it's a 10-minute brief, so that's one of the kind of feedbacks and the developments that I'm going to be looking at post PhD is when I package all of this up, making sure that everything is really accessible to teachers, not just the young people, because they probably know as much, if not less, than the young people, and it can seem quite a big challenge to be able to overcome it. But I think in a very basic way to answer your question, just making sure that it's something that can easily be picked up off a shelf and something that's delivered, but also relates to other aspects of the curriculum. And here in Wales, we've got this amazing curriculum which underpins sustainability, ethical citizenship, enterprising individuals, and healthy, people that are active within the global society. So I think we're a bit more open to it here. I'm not sure how well this would work in England, though, where it's a very, very different story. So I guess it comes down to curriculum, but I'm not sure if that answered your question or if I've put too many questions back at you now. But yeah, I found that
Good questions.
yeah. I found so much more freedom with the families, put it that way. The schools, they loved it. It was me getting my foot into the door that was the challenge. Once I was there, they wanted me to come back. But I can't be there all the time. I'm hoping to be able to equip them with the ability to do this themselves.
Yeah, that's also what we understand we have to look at.
Yeah.
It's so different, slightly different contexts, but we're getting to similar conclusions still.
Yes.
Great work, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Helen, maybe I can ask you a question because I was also like years ago, I was also having like a project on education for sustainable fashion consumption at schools. And I know that there are so many challenges when you're working with like schools, like what you talked about it now that they have like this strict curriculum and it's like there's always lack of time. But what was the most like difficult challenges you had when you worked with communities like with families? The time aspect, as I've heard, was not that much of an issue, but what was your biggest challenge there?
Well, it's interesting actually, because when I said that, I completely forgot that one of my areas, so I wanted to work in three very different geographical places within South Wales. So the one that went through the whole of the process was quite an affluent, eco-minded community. So they obviously had some sort of interest in this in the first place. Whereas the second venue just dropped off just like that. And they obviously didn't have very much interest in it. They thought it was a craft club and that they weren't going to have to do anything. So I found that that was quite possibly the biggest challenge. But it was interesting. I really wanted to work in that area because it was an area where I grew up. And it has huge levels of deprivation, and I wanted this kind of information to be accessible to everybody. So it was important that I worked in different kind of socio-economic areas, but it just didn't work in that area for whatever reason. I don't know if I was competing with Christmas because that was when they all decided to drop off, and I didn't hear from anybody ever again. But the kids loved it. They were giving me hugs after every session, but it was just the parents, they just didn't want to do it, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe they felt it was too much like being at school. But I think that that was the biggest challenge for me, because I wanted to work in three areas. The third one never even started. I didn't get anybody signing up. So it was just interesting because I thought that that was going to ruin my data collection. But actually, I ended up with too much data anyway, just from the one group. And I did have 200 children involved in the end. So
Amazing. Yeah, I guess it's very difficult to work like with different communities. It's amazing that you had at the end enough data for your project at least.
yeah,
And you cannot like
absolutely.
make everyone interested in one topic, I guess. So that's the reality.
Absolutely.
Cool. Is there any other question for Helen? I don't see one. So Helen, thank you so much for the
Oh, you're
presentation
welcome.
again. So amazing to hear the presentation, and I hope that we can make the recording available for the network members, because I'm pretty sure many people would have liked to join, but these internal sessions is always like this, that some people are canceling last minute. We know the reality of work in
Yeah,
academia.
absolutely. No,
So
I couldn't make the last one, and I was so excited to see Maytel and everybody, but
yeah,
life happens, doesn't it? So
yeah. But we're going to also make that recording available soon. And so, yeah, let's talk about that. Anyways, thank you so much. It was an amazing
you.
session. Thank you everyone for joining us. Yeah, let's keep
Thank
the
you. Thank you for
conversation going
organizing it.
on.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Samira.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
You take care.
Bye.
Bye.